みんながそばにいて。
吸引テスト開始。私を甘く見ないで。イオナの特性両弦のチャンス。
Yo, what's up YouTube? As you guys already know, Hu Tao is just about to get her first rerun banner, and since her original banner, a lot more information has come out about her. So as someone who is now triple crowned her and been playing her since day 1, I'm here to give you guys a complete breakdown on Hu Tao. In this video, I'll be going over her kit, best weapons, artifact sets, best teams, and more. Timestamps for everything can be found in the description, so with that, get started. Now first, we're going to be going over Hu Tao's kit. Now, even though our auto attack is pretty self-explanatory, there is one thing I want to point out, is that with her charge attack, without using her E, this is what it looks like, but with using her E, it is quite faster. Most of the time, you're going to be using your E while using your charge attack, so it doesn't matter too much, it's just something to keep in mind. Now moving on to her E, Hu Tao's damage mainly scales off of HP. So as you can see, my attack is sitting at about 2.2k. And when I use my E and go back, it doubles to about 4.4k, and it converts my attacks to pyro damage. Also, whenever you hit an enemy, if your E activated, you apply Blood Blossom, which will give you more damage to the enemy you have hit. Whenever you activate your E, you will lose about 30% of Hu Tao's HP. However, her kit is designed for this, as her Elemental Burst does restore a lot of her HP. It is also a nuke when it comes to the damage it does, and scales a lot higher based on her passive talent that we will go over, and scales really highly and will do a ton of damage. And it also sits at the low energy cost of only 60. And a lot of Hu Tao's damage, which helps a lot with losing 30% HP from her E, is that anytime you're below 50% HP with Hu Tao, your pyro damage is increased by 33%, which will increase your damage a lot overall, especially from her Elemental Burst. And Hu Tao's other really good passive skill that is the nice thing for having her as a main DPS on the field, that when your E does run out, everyone excluding Hu Tao in your party receives a 12% crit rate bonus, so that you can then swap off of Hu Tao and run through the Elemental Burst of your team and have a 12% boosted crit rate there before swapping back onto Hu Tao. And one last thing a lot of people don't talk about with Hu Tao is that with her passive talent, she has an 18% chance to receive an additional suspicious dish of the same type. Now, while that's not as good as the regular dish you can make, it's a bonus on top of the dish you're already making, and a lot of the dishes you can make in game, the only bonus you can equip with them so far in the game is Hu Tao's bonus dish. So it's at least better than getting nothing for those dishes that you can't use any other characters for. Also, when it comes to increasing Hu Tao's talents, I would always say to prioritize her auto attack first, her E, and then her burst. However, if you are running a nuke build, it is okay to increase her auto attack, her burst, and then her E. Now I'll give you guys a bit of a look at the Hu Tao I have been using for the past couple months. I'm sitting on about 4.4k attack with my E. My crit rate could definitely be a bit better, but I'm sitting on about 53 crit rate, 199 crit damage, and a 123 energy recharge with pyro damage bonus, and about 35k max HP. I'm running a R1 Staff of Homa with a 4-piece Crimson Witch set. Feel free to pause if you need to look at any of my artifacts. Some of them are most definitely subpar. And I am running a C0 currently. I plan for going Constellations on her rerun. And I have triple crowned her talents. Now moving on to weapons. What weapon you want on Hu Tao will depend on what artifacts you are running on her. So I will mainly be going over her best in-slot weapons and what builds they are good for. But which one you should run depends on what you are running on your Hu Tao. Now, without a doubt, Staff of Homa is her best in-slot weapon by a mile. Between the 66.2% crit damage main stat and the 20% HP increase you get at Refinement 1, this weapon increases Hu Tao's damage by a lot. Then again, Staff of Homa is just a really good weapon, which is almost every polearm user's best in-slot weapon. Now, Hu Tao's next best weapons would have to be either Deathmatch or Dragon's Bane. Which weapon is better for you depends on what your build needs. Deathmatch is great if you are lacking in crit rate for Hu Tao, but if your crit ratio is okay, the Elemental Mastery and damage output you get from the Dragon's Bane is amazing if you already have a good crit ratio. Now, another solid option for Hu Tao is if you have the Jade Spear. However, it only barely passes Deathmatch and Dragon's Bane in terms of damage, so if you have this weapon and you're already using it on someone else like Zhao, don't feel pressured to give it to Hu Tao, as the 4-star options are just as good. Finally, I want to talk about the new polearm coming in on the new weapon banner with Hu Tao. I would say to only use it on Hu Tao for a nuke build, as it doesn't really help the rest for kit, because the main thing it's going to be doing for you is increasing your elemental burst by a lot, which is great for our ultimate, but with just a high base attack and attack percent main stat, it's not really helping Hu Tao too much in any other way. Also, for 3-star options, I would say you'd want to either use the black tassel or the white tassel, so you can increase your HP for Hu Tao or increase your crit rate. However, I would definitely recommend using something else on Hu Tao. These are just a good start if you're waiting to get one of the other weapons I have mentioned. Now moving on to artifact sets, Hu Tao's best artifact set is going to be the 4-piece Crimson Witch set, as you are getting a 15% pyro damage bonus increase, and with the 4-piece set you are increasing your elemental reaction damage and further increasing your pyro damage when you activate your elemental skill. However, we all know it can be extremely hard to get 4 good artifacts the same set, so a way of helping that is running 2 different sets on Hu Tao, which can be done by either running 2-piece Crimson with 2-piece Tenacity, as the 2-piece Tenacity is going to increase your HP by 20%, so this is great to still increase your damage, especially if you're not running Staff of Homa. Running 2-piece Crimson, 2-piece Noblesse for nuke build, which I would not recommend for Hu Tao as a main DPS build, but if you're mainly using her to just swap her onto the field to use her elemental burst, this can be a great build for you, as this will increase your burst damage by 20%, which is another great build for her if you're not using her as a main DPS. Also, one last thing you can run on Hu Tao is the 4-piece Shimenawa set, because with this set, the 2-piece might not be doing a lot for her, but if you run the 4-piece set, you're going to be increasing your charge attack damage by 50%, which is very helpful with how you usually run main Hu Tao DPS. Now, while the Crimson Witch set will still be the best slot for Hu Tao, if you're having trouble farming that set for Hu Tao and getting good pieces, if you've already been farming the album set for different characters that you already have, you will be collecting this set on the side, which means you might have a good 4-piece set for Hu Tao, which might be better than half subpar Crimson Witch pieces for Hu Tao, because she utilizes this 4-piece set a lot. Now moving on to the stats of your artifacts, you definitely want to be running a pyro damage bonus goblet. For the crown, you either want to be running crit rate or crit damage depending on what you need. I personally run crit rate, as the Staff Homa is giving me crit damage. Lastly, for the sands, you either want HP or Elemental Mastery. HP is going to give you a more comfy playstyle, as you're going to be having more HP to work with, and the damage you can do is pretty straightforward. However, if you're running a Shield of Hu Tao, running Staff of Homa, or just looking to increase the damage healing you can do with Hu Tao, an Elemental Mastery timepiece can be great for you. With an Elemental Mastery timepiece, you will do a lot more damage of elemental reactions, which could be amazing if you're already getting a lot of HP percent from your substats or the Staff of Homa. I'm just personally running an HP Sands, as it's a more relaxed playstyle, so it really just comes down to what kind of playstyle you want with Hu Tao. For the substats, this applies to all sets you run on Hu Tao. You're going to be looking for crit damage, crit rate, HP percent, and Elemental Mastery, and a bit of energy recharge. Elemental Mastery is going to help you increase your damage through Vaporize and Melt reactions, and Hu Tao's burst doesn't need much energy, just about 60, but it's still nice to increase your energy recharge to somewhere around 130 to 140%. Now for the best teams to run with Hu Tao. I'm going to be going over free-to-play friendly and more expensive options. Now, without a doubt, any team building Hu Tao, the most important person to go with Hu Tao is Xingqiu. His elemental burst just perfectly pairs Hu Tao's elemental skill. With Xingqiu's burst, when you take Hu Tao's E, every single time you charge attack with her, you're going to be getting a free Vaporize damage, which literally just equates to free damage Hu Tao, and you're going to be increasing your damage overall, which is one of the reasons why Xingqiu just pairs perfectly with Hu Tao. Now, there's many options you can choose from for the other 2 people on your team with Hu Tao and Xingqiu, but to focus on something that's very free-to-play friendly would be using Noelle and any other Geo character you may have, whether that's GeoMC or Ning like I have on team here, which not only helps you get damage off the field when you're not using Hu Tao, but specifically with Noelle. With Noelle's passive talent, whenever your character's HP falls below 30%, which is going to happen a lot while playing Hu Tao, you're going to be getting a shield on your Hu Tao just by having Noelle in your party, which helps a lot as an easy option for free-to-plays. And this especially helps out as well if you do not have Zhongli to pair with Hu Tao. Another great option for a Hu Tao team is pairing her with a pyro support such as Homa. who is going to be featured on our banner. If you're wondering why I'm not putting Xingqiu with Toma, is because unless your Xingqiu is C6, Toma will be stealing vaporized damage from Hu Tao, which will significantly lower her damage. So instead, I would pair her with a shield such as Zhongli or Noelle, and Sucrose for swirl reaction damage and buffing. The final team for Hu Tao, which can really unlock a lot of her potential, is running her with a cryo support such as Ayaka or Ganyu, as their bursts pair really well with Hu Tao. You can constantly proc melt reaction using either Ayaka's burst or Ganyu's burst. For the third option, you have many choices. You can either go with an Animo support for swirl reactions, whether that be Sucrose or Kazuha, or you can enlist a cryo support for that extra crit rate from the resonance using someone like Rosaria or Chongyun. And finally, for the last character, for my personal preference, I would either go with a shield character such as Zhongli or Noelle just to be able to mesh with the team well. And now we'll move on to Hu Tao's Constellation. Now, as a prerequisite before any of this, I will always say Constellations are not necessary for a character. Personally, for myself, I would always take getting a new character over a Constellation for a character, but that is up to you. I'm just going to talk about which Constellations are really good for her and some that aren't as necessary. Now, starting with Hu Tao's C1, her C1 is absolutely amazing. At no point is it necessary, but it definitely helps out her gameplay a lot, as your charge attacks will not consume stamina, so you can continuously just keep doing that damage of your E until the cooldown is off, and you will be able to get much more damage done in a smaller window with her C1. Now, Hu Tao's C2, it doesn't really change your gameplay at all. It just basically gives you extra damage. With your Blood Blossom, what you're adding on after you charge attack somebody, that will do 10% more damage based on Hu Tao's max HP, and on top of that, when you use your Elemental Burst, it will also apply this effect. It's not changing Hu Tao's gameplay at all, really, but if you want that little bit of extra damage, you're going to get that from her C2. Now, Hu Tao's C4, in my opinion, is not really necessary at all because of her passive talent already existing, but it does help a little bit that once you would charge attack an enemy and defeat that enemy, when you start to do the rotation of the other characters in your party, they're now going to have even more of a crit rate boost. But for a C4, I feel like it's a bit weak, but it's still nice to have if you get it. Now, for Hu Tao's C6, keep in mind this is a Constellation 6, so you're not going to be getting this easily, but if you do get it, Hu Tao's Constellation 6 is very, very good. When any time her HP is below 25%, or when she suffers a lethal strike, she will be able to live. And additionally, for the next 10 seconds, all of her elemental and physical resistance is increased by 200%, so she will take way less damage, and her crit rate is increased by 100%. This can only occur once every 60 seconds, so every minute you can have this buff. And one thing that some people like to do that I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but is fun if you do want to do it for having C6, because her crit rate is increased by 100% with this, you could just take all of the crit rate off of her build and replace it for crit damage. So with this effect, you could see just how much damage you'd be able to do with it. So in my personal opinion, honestly, the only constellation I think that really matters on Hu Tao is C1. Anything past that is great if you want it, but not necessary by any means. Now, a lot of people like to ask, what should I be getting for Hu Tao if I just want a bit more than C0? Should I go for Staff of Homa or for C1? In my opinion, I think you could choose between either and get about as much out of it. In the first run of the banner, I personally went for Staff of Homa rather than her C1 because I liked having the aesthetic of the weapon more and just getting the damage from the crit damage and HP percent from the weapon. But at the same time, her C1 is equally as strong. So if I was to answer that question, I think you have to decide that for yourself. Her C1 can be easier to get than pulling a weapon, because a lot of the time getting a 5-star weapon that you want in the weapon banner could be extremely hard, especially now even with the fact that you have to roll 2 5-star weapons to be able to get the 5-star weapon you want on the third 5-star if you're unlucky. That's going to take more pulls than if you were to get unlucky trying to get Hu Tao C1. So if I had to choose between the two, I think you'd have to ask, are you looking more for the 4-star characters on Hu Tao's banner, or looking to pick up some of the 4-star weapons along the way on the weapon banner, so that if you're unlucky on either one, are you getting more of what you want? But especially for free-to-plays, unless Hu Tao is 100% your favorite character in the game, I would say it'd probably be in your best opinion just to save for future characters you want, than rather potentially having to do hundreds of pulls for either C1 Hu Tao or Staff of Homa. Now that sums up about everything on how to build Hu Tao. In my opinion, Hu Tao is a very free-to-play friendly character to build, but she does take a lot of investment to build, but this video is here to help you with that. Hopefully you were able to learn something about Hu Tao today, and I'll be making sure to improve my guides in the future for you guys. But if you have any further questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or you can stop by my Twitch where I stream almost every day, and I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. But with that said, that's all I have to say. I wish you guys luck in your pulls, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.